Hello everybody. Here's another quick tutorial based on uh, a an event, for want of a better word. There's a post made by Joan in the Stuck at Homers group where we all shared an image and a tip. So one of our favourite images and a tip, and this wasn't one of my favourite images, although it's all right. I've done worse. I quite like this. Stop criticising. Um, but the tip I shared was luminosity masks, and go and find out about you if you don't know anything about them. Go and find out about luminosity masks. Have a little investigate and see how you can use them. So to save you a bit of digging around, I'll do a very brief introduction to luminosity masks here. So what are luminosity masks? Well, they're masks based on luminosity, which I know is just saying the same words in a different order, but let's have a look at them. Let's go through and we can sort of find out as we go. It'll make sense as we go. But yeah, so I'll do this in two parts. I'll do it in terms of creating the masks. So this bit you might find a bit boring, and the thing is, once you've done it once, you record it as an action, and then you never have to do it again. You just press play, and your luminosity masks are there for you. But we'll go through that, and you never know. I might even share some of I might share the luminosity masks in the group. So as an action, so you can download, and you don't even have to do this bit. But it's good to know what's under the hood, as it were. And then we'll put it into practice. So I'll show you how to use luminosity masks, or a very brief introduction. There's lots of ways of using them, but I'll show you very common ways of using them. So how do we? Let's create some luminosity masks. Now the masks are all created in our channels tab over here. There you go, channels. And if you look here, these are effectively masks. If you can take this and put it into a mask on one of your layers, it would block out some bits, it hide some bits of that layer, and it'd show other bits. And already, you can use these, as and I'm sure you do when editing, especially things like very often we see people cutting out and things like that using these masks. So this concept won't be alien to you. You'll know all about it. So let's make our first selection, and let's not forget, a mask is a selection, and we're going to make our first selection by Control or Command. And as I go forwards, I'll just use the word Control because I'm lazy, and you Apple users will have to just substitute the word Command. So I'll use Control and click on an area, and when you do that, it splits the image into two. Everything, from 50% luminosity to 100% will be sort of white, and vice versa. So it creates a mono image, in other words. So let's do that. We've created. So you can see here, marching ants. We have a selection. It's created what's effectively a mono image of that image in a selection. And what we're going to do is going to turn that selection now into a channel. Now, if we just click on new channel, we'll just get a new blank channel. So I don't know if you can see my mouse down there. But if we select on this, which you'll recognize as the mask icon from layers, we get a new channel, and I'm going to click on it so you can see it. There you go, nice mono image. So that's our first mask. So that's a mask that's effectively selecting the highlights. And what we're going to do now is create another mask that selects highlights, but a smaller range, so the brighter highlights rather than these highlights. So we've got a range here from 50% luminosity up. We're going to intersect this selection, and we'll create a mask that takes brighter highlights. And so some of the highlights that are selected in this will not be selected in the next one. And I'm going to do that by intersecting this selection. So keep the selection on there. Do not Control D at this point. And if I click on that mask again with Control Alt Delete and click, you'll see straight away that the selection got smaller, and as it disappeared, did I Control H? Yeah, I've lost my selection. Good grief. So let's just double check. Yep, there's no selection. Ah, there we go. There's my selection. So Control Z being your best friend. So, and don't worry, I'm going to go through this again in just a second. So if you didn't follow that, you soon will. So here we go. I'm going to hit on our mask icon, and you can see that all of a sudden, you know, so some of the highlights, if I flick between the two, are no longer visible. As we go, it's selecting just the brighter highlights, and I'm going to go one more. Control Alt Delete and click, and you can see that even fewer of the selection is showing. So if I now hit this, the creates a new selection as a channel, and let's have a look at it. And there you go. You can see that now even fewer of the highlights are selected. I'm now going to Control D. I'm just going to get rid of that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up here. I'm just going to rename these channels. So that's our highlights, our brighter highlights, and these are our brightest highlights. There we go. So now we've got a selection of masks that will help us target highlights. So we're going to do the same with our shadows. And to do that, we're just going to, you may have noticed I've already Control D. I've removed all selections. So what I'm going to do, I could click on RGB, but I'm going to, just for the heck of it, I'm going to click on this one, Control click, and we've got effectively a copy of this, and I'm going to create a new channel. But this is identical, so this as the previous one, it's selecting the highlights. So what we want to do is Control I. Before I do Control I, and in fact, you know what? I'm going to do it wrong first, just so you see it. If I Control I now, obviously we've got a selection, and it's only inverted anything that's in the selection. So Control Z. What I'm going to do is get rid of that selection. Control D. I'm going to go now Control I for inverse, and boom, we've selected all our shadows. Now, what I want to do is create another of these. As we did with our highlights, targeting the darker shadows as we go. So we got 50% shadows here. We go darker, darker, darker. To intersect the selection though, first I've now got to select it. So Control D. Now to intersect the selection, it's Shift Control Alt all together, and click on the icon again to intersect the selection. So I've just done that. What I'm going to do is now create a new channel from selection. We've just done that, and again, if I click on that one and click down onto the next channel, you'll notice that less of the shadows are now masked or visible. There's more of the shadows are masked out. So we've still got our selection, and what I'm going to do is intersect that again to create another channel. That's Shift Control Alt and select, and you can see straight away our marching ants jumped in a bit. So let's create a new channel from selection and just have a look at that. And there you can see quite clearly that as I skip through them, more and more, going backwards, more and more of the shadows are unmasked. So, or masked if we come in this way. I hope we're following that. Sorry, I've not prepared this. So, sorry, Stuckatomas. If this isn't making sense, it's because I've just decided to sit down and do it. And it's, I should have written some stuff down and been more professional. But we don't care. Right, so now we have a good number of channels that can help us target shadows and highlights and create targeted adjustments. let's rename those shadows. And I'm sure you can guess where this is going. Darker shadows. And the darkest shadows. And by the way, you don't have to stop at 3. I do. If I want another one, I just create it. You know, if I find that's not working for me and I need yet another one to target, you know, just the darkest of all shadows or the brightest of all highlights, just come back to you to these and create another one. Darkest shadows. I would say though, is if you do that, make sure you unclick all your adjustments and you do it from the same position you did this. Otherwise, it will include any when you create the selection from channels. Oh no, because they'll already be here. Forget it. That's only if you're starting from the beginning. Darker shadows, right? So now we have a set of luminosity masks that help us target our highlights and our shadows. The only thing that's left is our midtones. I'm going to hit Control D now just to remove all of our selection. And our midtones are created by selecting everything and then taking away selections, which is quite easy. If you didn't know that, and again, if you look at these channels, that are, you know, these masks, they're effectively selections, and you can take one again away from another, and that's how we're going to target our midtones. So if we Control A, I should say, can select all. We've got everything selected. So now if we Control and Alt and hit our highlights, what we effectively do is take our highlights out of that selection. And I'm going to do the same now with the shadows. Control Alt, click on shadows. And we get this warning here telling us that because pixels are more than 50% selected, the selection edges will not be visible. I think they're too difficult to display. We don't mind that, that's okay. And now we're going to create our layer based on the current selection we have. And that's just popped up at the bottom. You can see it there. Let's click on it so you can see it. And these are our midtones. And you know what? That's what I'm going to, oops, that's what I'm going to call this midtones, this channel. So there we go. We have a bunch of luminosity masks. Now, as I say, that's quite convoluted. And you could probably do that in under a minute, well under a minute, if you just did it. I'm talking through it, so it seems quite convoluted, seems quite lengthy. It's not that bad. And you only ever do it once because you record it as an action before you do it. And then all you've got to do is press play and you've got your luminosity masks. Right, so I'm going to click on the RGB channel. So when I get back to layers, everything looks normal. Everything looks as I expect it to be. And let's talk about how we use luminosity masks and why we choose luminosity masks. Okay, so just looking at this image, we might decide that there's some highlights we're not keen on. And I'm going to say, let's ooh, that big brush, let's just reduce it so you can see. So this highlight above her left eye, and Charlie, by the way, if you don't know, it's Charlie Bar. There's a highlight there above her left eye. We decide we don't like that. Now, obviously, if you're going to create your own mask, that's going to be a bit fiddly. It'll take you a bit of time. But you know what? We now have our luminosity mask. So let's have a look. I'm going to flick through highlights. Do you know what? I don't think it quite targets that bit of her. No, that's of her skin. But you can see there that there's a definite sort of bright peak. But you know what? On this one, if we go here, we can see that nice bright peak is going to be really targeted by the adjustment. There's some other bits that will be as well. You can see down here her hair and the collar of the garment she's wearing. That's pure white as well. So when we talk about that as a mask, anything we do with that mask will be visible there. But we can deal with that. It's not a problem. So we want to select this mask, and if you remember, to make a selection from something, it's Control and click, Command. Go on, Apple users, you can have it. Command, Control, click, and there we go. We have a selection. You can see it's targeting the areas of that we decided were quite bright. So let's come back to our layers. So we've got the selection. Now we're going to make an adjustment, and boom. So we have an adjustment. We created a new adjustment layer because we created it with that selection in mind. It's automatically created us a nice layer mask there. So far, so good. It's looking fairly good. So yeah, we want to bring those highlights down. So let's bring our curves down. Oh, look at that. Now, we brought our curves down. It's made an adjustment. And what it's done, it's affected a bit more than we'd hoped. That's not a problem. And in fact, our highlights are hardly affected. And let's have a look at, yeah. And that's why. It's because they're the wrong side. They're up here, and we're going to make an adjustment that really includes that. So let's pull that down as we do. And you can see, I'll just pull that down slowly. We can see that highlights all but disappeared. I think that looks much better. Am I going to pull that down a bit more? Yeah, there we go. And I think we're happy with that. So we've done that. One of the things we've noticed though, as we pulled the luminosity down, is the saturation went a bit red for me. So I'm going to fix that by simply changing blending mode to luminosity, and that already looks a bit better. But as I've said, it's affecting parts of the image we might not want it to. Fine, we can deal with that. And one way we could deal with it, and it's not the way we're going to do it, and I never suggest you do that. We could just go into the layer mask. Let's click on it. Let's just alt click so we can have a look at it. We could go into the layer mask and paint black where we don't want it to look. But I suggest you never alter the layer mask. And one of the reasons is, you know, it's a copy of the image. It's self-feathering. You're less likely to get artifacts unless you play with it. So if you was to do something with the levels in that, if you was to change that, you might introduce artifacts where bits of the image, like you might introduce a halo or something like that, bits of the image don't look right. Not a problem though. What we're going to do, Control G, we're going to click on the layer, Control G, put it in a group. So it's got its own group. And what I'm going to do now is create a layer mask. I'm going to hold Alt down because that will create me a nice black layer mask. So Alt, new layer mask. And there you go. And all I'm going to do now is paint some white in it. So I've just checked my foreground colors white. I've got a nice slow flow, 6%. So I'm going to create a slightly bigger brush for the heck of it. Big soft brush, nice, slow flow. I'm just going to paint until I'm happy. Over, highlight, and there we go. I'm quite enjoying it. I'm quite liking that. I'm thinking, yeah, let's click on and off. Hey, you see, looking good. Obviously, you probably spend a bit more time. This is for the benefit of a tutorial. I'm going to just remove that highlight. Yeah. Okay, let's imagine that I've spent hours on that and it's now looking perfect. So you can see straight away how to target adjustments with, you know, without getting too fiddly. I mean, when you know, the layer mask I made was a big blobby one. Can you show it here? There's nothing, you know, no finesse there. So it takes away all the difficult fiddly bits. Let's have a quick look at our shadows. So we might want to bring some shadows. Let's say we want to bring the shadows, something up in the hair, you know, a bit more detail in the hair. So let's do that. Again, we come to our channels, and what we might do is have a look at our shadows and see which one targets the hair best. And you know what? That targets the hair, but it targets just about everything. I think the middle one is the one that's going to do it for me, because it's, yeah. Right, so let's click on RGB. I like to do this now so I can see what I'm doing. So we decided on the middle one, darker shadows. So if I control and click on the thumbnail, I've just made my selection. That's brilliant. Come across here, and I'm going to create another curves layer, adjustment layer. I'm going to bring that outside of this because obviously this is masked for this layer underneath. I haven't named them, which would have been the right thing to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a hair up and highlights up so it's a bit more detail. There we go. I'm only looking at a hair at the moment. Do you know what the heck that'll do is actually, and this is one of the things that you often find with layer masks, because they self-feather and because they target the same areas of luminosity. When you start playing with them, looking, you know, and in my case, I'm looking at the hair. You play with them, and it brings up, it evens the image up for you, and you think, my God, that's brilliant. I'm not going to touch that. This is a pre-edited image actually, so you can see I put some textures in there and that kind of thing. But just bringing that up in the, you know, with targeting the shadows, I think that's already improved. However, just for the purposes of this, I am now going to put this in its own layer mask, in its own group. Control G. I am going to create another layer mask, and I'm going to hold Alt down, so it's a black layer mask, hiding everything. And now again, I'm just going to create brush a bit bigger. I'm not going to be too accurate with my painting, but I'm just going to paint her hair. And that's the beauty of layer masks, as I say. It handles the delicate and the detail bits for you. So let's just flick this off and on just to see if we're happy. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to put a bit more into it there. Yeah, there you go. Have a bit of that. There we go. Although if I'm honest, I'm going to turn that mask off again a second. Yeah, I think I prefer that. But anyway, you know, purposes of this. So here we go. And I don't think I need to. I could, if the saturation was, you know, adjusted again, I could have changed the blending mode of this to luminosity. I've left it at normal for this one. So we've got our midtones as well. So how would we use that? Because, you know, luminosity with midtones is a bit odd. And there's Google it. There's hundreds of ways of using all these masks. But, you know, I'm looking at this. There's a good deal of red in Charlie's face here that my editing has put in. So let's have a look. So now I'm going to target the midtones. I've only got the one. By the way, you can create more midtones. I took everything and intersected and removed the highlights and the shadows from that. But you could go on and do another one and remove the brighter highlights and the darker shadows, and have another mask that targets a different, slightly different range of midtones. You know, whatever you have a play with it, whatever you want to do. So let's have a look at it. Oh, good grief, I'm getting all notifications. You might not be able to see these. All right. If I seem distracted, it's because I've got notifications banging up all across me at the moment. Right, midtones. So control, click. Yeah, it's telling us that yes, you've made a selection, but the selection edges won't be visible. And there we go. Have a look up here. This histogram, by the way, that's suddenly disappeared. So that gives you a clue what's going on there. So we know we've made a selection. We're going to go back to our layers. And what I'm going to do this time is show you something you can do. You can use Selective Color to have a play. I'm just going to use hue saturation just for the benefit of speed. So here we go. I've got that. I'm going to move this outside of that group. I should be more organized and get that done first. There we go. So it's on top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play with the hue. And, you know, yeah, blimey, it looks ridiculous. Ooh, you're playing to, ooh, but actually, you know what, those two ends are quite like that. I think that brings her pale skin tones up just nice. I quite like that. Now, you might think that, you know, what's the point of that? So I'm just going to turn this layer mask off for a second. So that's what it looks like if it's not masked. Kind of ridiculous. But actually, with that mask just targeting the midtones, it's made a couple of it's a color grade that really works actually for her skin tones. Again, you could put this in a group and mask it out and just mask it to a skin if that's what you wanted to do. I'm not going to, because that brings me to the end of my talk on luminosity masks. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found something out of it. Give me a shout if you want me to release my actions. And there you go. Let's just have a quick look at that. I'm going to remove these layers. There's my hue saturation layer mask. So this is quite interesting actually. You know if you got it wrong. So now I've selected all of those. So it's selected all the tone in that range. Now I've got a completely, you know, red view there. So if I was to take that one off, no, you can't see. If it's take a few of those out, what would happen is the image would start to come up, but the fact that it's completely red would say that every tone is covered in that lot. Anyway, let's get rid of them. Boom. So I've got rid of all my layer masks. Now that seemed quite a complicated ordeal to set them up, but clearly we don't do that. We just luminosity masks, click play, sit back, wait for it to all happen. There it is. We come to our channels and we have our luminosity masks just here. I hope that made sense for you to you all. I hope I didn't bore you, and I promise you next time I'll probably plan it and script it out a little bit better. But until then, happy editing. I hope you have good fun, and I shall speak to you soon. Take care all.